Hey guys, Dave from Timber Time Outdoors. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to test the Artillian Grapple 5 different ways. We're going to reconfigure it. We're going to see how it will hold firewood to make it a little easier on the backs. This is kind of a follow-up to the video I did a couple weeks ago. I'll put that video here. But basically, I wanted to buy a grapple to hold logs so I don't have to bend over when I cut them. Well, the beauty of the Artillian Grapple is you can configure it different ways. So we've got 5 different configurations in this video, so we're going to test them all, and then we'll kind of just talk through each one, pros and cons, and we'll see which one I like going forward. So stay with us, guys.
Hey now, take a step outside and seize the day now.
All right, let's jump right into it, guys. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm on a quest here to try to get some equipment that will take some of the pressure off my back. I've been doing firewood for several years now and starting to experience some problems. And so purchasing this grapple was one of my ideas here to try to hold the logs up at waist level so I'm not bent over all the time. And it's working quite well. But as I mentioned with the Artillian Grapple, you have lots of choices, lots of different ways that you can configure the grapple. And so in this video here, we're going to start with kind of a basic baseline of basically using just the pallet forks, and then we're going to progress upward and show you a bunch of different ways that you can configure this grapple and see how well it holds onto the logs and how useful it actually is to cut firewood. So let's get started. Okay, so test number 1 is a baseline, and I used the pallet forks here by themselves basically to kind of measure everything else up against this. And the reason I did that is, with all testing, you always want to have kind of what's the most common method and see if you can find something better. So I figured a lot of you folks out there use pallet forks because they're inexpensive. Almost everybody has them if they have a tractor. So as you can see here, I'm struggling a little bit to get the log picked up. And one of the things that's going on here with my tractor is I'm having some problems with the valve. You can see the loader's very, very abrupt and jerky here, so that's part of the issue. But it is tricky to get the log up on the pallet forks versus using a grapple. So, I get it all set up here. I've got it at waist high, and I start making my cuts. And you'll see here I go from side to side so that the log doesn't fall off. So I make a couple cuts on one side, a couple cuts on the other. But you can see that the log isn't very stable. I had the forks out wide here to try to increase that stability. But then I run into another issue here. As I get in close to the metal, then I'm not sure what to do, because if I cut it in the center, it's going to fall. So I basically decided, well, I'll just do like some 3/4 cuts, kind of notch it here, and then I'll have to finish making the rounds on the ground. Not ideal. I'm curious what you guys actually do. Maybe someone could make a comment, because I know a lot of you do use pallet forks, but good bang for the buck here, but I would like a little more stability on the log. All right, this next one was actually suggested by a subscriber, so I thought I'd give it a try. Basically what I'm trying to do here is use a center grapple and some forks to give it some stability on the sides. And so you can see here I struggle quite a bit to try to get the log all the way up into the grapple. And you'll see here that they're not at the same level. And that's really the issue. So the log kind of gets stuck at the front of the grapple. I do my best to try to flip it up, to get it into the jaws, but I just wasn't able to do it. The log was too heavy. Maybe with a little more practice it could be done. But so anyway, I started kind of playing with the grapple and seeing what was happening here. And essentially when you clamp down the grapple, at least with this particular log, not sure if it would work with every log, it has a tendency to kind of pinch it just slightly, so the nose of the grapple pinches it down against the forks, and seem to work. So then, as I look at this, I'm like, all right, well, I think it's held down tight enough. Let's give it a try. So, I fire up the saw here and um, give it a little kick, and you can kind of see, yeah, it seems like it's going to hold on. And so I make a few cuts. Um, so I get a couple rounds here on the right hand side, and things are going pretty well. So it seems to be working better than just plain pallet forks. I've got more stability on the log. But as I keep cutting and I get some weight hanging off the left side and less weight on the right side, it you can see here it just comes loose on me. I'm actually cutting off a little knob, and pretty soon the log basically just falls right off. Now, it was kind of a fun thing. I kind of think this was a fail. Maybe you could experiment a little more and get it to work, but just something we tried, and we'll chalk that one up as a fail. Okay, next up, I'm calling this the full enchilada. So what I have here is two grapples with the center rake. This is basically all the components that I have. You can see I've just got great control over the log. I was able to pick it up very easy with the tractor. I purchased the Artillian Grapple after watching a video that a Ritter Bit will do. Great channel, by the way. He did a video about the Artillian Grapple and cutting firewood. And what he shows in that video is that you're able to get the saw between the grapple components to actually, keep cutting. So you'll see that I get to that here after I cut off the ends. Again, the log's not moving at all. I'm able to push down as hard as I want. But then as I transition into the center, I wasn't quite sure I was going to get the right width of the logs here. So I'm thinking, oh, am I going to get 16 inches? Because I like my logs to be 16 when I split them. So I kind of rethink it here, and it looks like, yeah, I think I can get it through there. It is pretty scary, though. You only have about an inch or so on each side of the saw, so you got to be careful. But I was able to get a nice 16-inch round on the right-hand side there. And after looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I think I can get this center section as well. So I did cut that. Later on, I did end up hitting the grapple with the saw and wrecked the chain. So you do have to be careful. You don't have great visibility. And you can see here, I did wind up with a piece that was like about 24 inches. And I had to cut that one separately. So all in all, I did like this configuration. It's just a little risky when you try to cut in between the grapple and the rake. All right, next up, basically I'm taking the center rake out and just going with two grapples. So the thought process here was that I'd be able to have more spacing to line the saw up with 16-inch length rounds. And so I basically take this off, which is super easy to do. Now you can tell, same control with the grapple as far as picking logs up. Didn't have any trouble with that whatsoever. So basically the same as having the rake in place. And then once I start cutting here, you'll see everything is basically identical. I've got plenty of power. I've got plenty of stability. And, one thing that's weird about YouTube is that you can always show the perfect scenario. And in this video, I'm going to try to show you some of the things that don't go perfect. Getting things lined up with the grapple and the spacing doesn't work out most of the time. You end up cutting a few of these on the ground, a few shorter pieces, and you can see that here. Even though I've got more space in between grapples, I still run into the problem where I can't get every single log at 16 inches. So I was able to cut the center section out of here, but you can see it pinches the saw a little bit. So again, not perfect, but I was able to continue on and at least get that section out. But then, I'm left with two kind of weird lengths, and I needed to cut right where the grapples were. So what did I do? Well, I basically have some flexibility with where I can put those grapples from side to side. So I try it again with the grapples closer together. So again, being able to pick up logs the same way. You can kind of see they're a lot closer together here. Was just thinking that maybe I'd have less to deal with as I get to the center of the log. And that is the case as you work your way towards the center. But again, you're going to see here that I just don't get everything lined up quite right. And so no matter what you do, you're going to end up with a piece that you're going to have to cut on the ground. Um, Incidentally, you know, when you have two grapples, there's actually three different positions that you can put them in. So all the way spaced out, which is what I showed previously. Here they're as close together as they can be, and there's actually a position in between, which I'm not showing, but I did try and it didn't make any difference. I still ran into the problem where, you know, darn it, I just can't quite get these all at 16 inches. But it did help save my back. Okay, the last configuration here. What I'm doing here is I'm taking off one of the grapples and I'm gonna put one of the grapples right in the center. I just love how these grapples come on and off. Super easy to do it. I got these little keys that you take in and out and they slide back and forth. Not very heavy, so if you need to store them away, again, you can kind of see over my shoulder there, I've got one on a pallet. Very easy to do. All right, so I've got it set up with one grapple here, and as I start into the pile, fairly straightforward. I'm able to pick the log up. Notice that I'm in the middle, which is kind of important, as you'll see here. So able to pick that log up and get it into position to make some cuts. So as I fire up the 500i here, I just start going at it and I start cutting only on the right hand side here, and you're going to see what happens. The load becomes unbalanced and you just don't have the stability you need with one grapple. It just doesn't have enough surface area to hang on to the log. So you can see there it goes kittywampus on me. So, you know, when you fail, you try again, right? So try to pick this log up again in the center, and as you'll see in the video here, I struggle just a little bit. I prefer having two grapples. A little wider grapple makes all the difference in the world. You know, I think if you had one center grapple and two rakes on the side, which is one of the configurations that Artillian sells, this might work a lot better as far as picking logs up. But just one grapple is kind of difficult. I mean, you have to get it just right in the center. I know they make some little fangs that you could put on there, would probably help. But you know, I had to reposition the tractor a couple different times and make sure it was right in the center here to get the log up. But things go better once I get it picked up and centered and I've got a good grip on the log. I take a different approach here. So what I decide to do is cut the rounds off of each side and kind of alternate back and forth to try to keep the load balanced. And that does work pretty well here, as you'll see. The log doesn't get away from me, and I end up with a nice short piece. Now it is, as you'll see in the pictures, it is longer than 16 inches, so I end up, you know, making a cut on the ground. But I'm going to do some more experimenting here with one grapple. I think there's a technique involved to make it work, but this went better the second time, like many things do. And you can see the saw just goes right through, and you don't have any risks of hitting that grapple. You can see I got one cut left and it's right in the middle. So here I just end up cutting it on the ground. So really fun test, guys. I had a great time doing this. I think we'll kind of analyze things here and see where I go with the next test. All right, guys, what did we learn here? 5 different configurations. Obviously, some of them were a complete fail, like this one right here. You know, which one did I like? I guess I like the 2 grapple configuration without the rake. Gives you really good control over the log. Yeah, you got some spacing issues and you don't always get the log completely cut. But I think the trade-off there is probably the way I'll go forward. Although I am going to do some more cutting with just one grapple without the forks. You saw it got a little tippy, and you know, it's holding it in the center. There's just too much torque on a heavy log. But you know, the reason I bought this, one of the reasons, is it's kind of simulating you know, a log grapple, if you know what that is. I'll put a picture of that here. It simulates a log grapple, but it doesn't clamp down on the log tight enough, and so it has a tendency to torque, as you saw in the video. But I like 2. I'm going to try 1 some more, But I'll tell you, the best value here, if you don't want to spend the money on a grapple, which it's a lot of money with the grapple and the third function, although super useful for other things too, right? But if you're just going to use a tractor for cutting firewood, the pallet forks, man, the the price per log, or however you want to break that down, pallet forks are very inexpensive and they do a decent job. You get great spacing, you can get some stability there. I might do some more with the pallet forks too. We'll see how that goes, but good value there. So anyway, we'll wrap this video up. It's getting a little long. Thanks for watching. If you learned something or liked it, please hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. Make a comment if you've done some of this with pallet forks, or you've got a grapple. Maybe there's a configuration that you've done that I didn't try here. We can all learn together from those comments. Send it to your friends, and we'll wrap this video up. Remember, everybody, keep it in the timber. Bye-bye.